Hi, my name's Seraphine. I was 11 when my stepfather threw me into the freezing rain like garbage. No coat, no shoes, just his last words burning in my ears. You should never have been born. I ran that night, bleeding, sobbing, choking on air so cold it felt like knives. And the worst part? No one came looking. Not my mother, not the neighbors, not even the police. But that was only the beginning. Because what I found in the dark shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. Before we begin, tell me, what time are you listening to this? And where are you right now? Drop it in the comments below. This story's going to haunt you. It wasn't just cold that evening. It was hollow. The kind of cold that settled inside you, not on your skin. You could feel it in the way nobody looked up, in the way the forks clinked just a little too loud against the plates, in the way I sat at the far end of the table like a guest nobody invited. We were 4 that night, my stepfather Darius, my mom Elaine, my half-brother Kyle, and me, Seraphine, 11 years old and somehow already invisible. The kitchen smelled like canned gravy and old lemon cleaner. The walls were that yellow you see in houses built too fast. Our dinner table was worn down in all the wrong places, edges fraying, legs uneven. I'd memorized every knot in that wood from all the nights I'd kept my head down. The television murmured faintly in the next room. Something about that made it worse. As if the house wanted noise, but not mine. Darius sat at the head of the table, always did. He liked power in small ways. The tallest chair, the last word, the biggest serving. Tonight was no different. He filled his plate high with pot roast, poured thick gravy over everything, then handed a generous scoop to my little brother. Mom got hers next. She always got hers next. I waited. He didn't even glance at me when he slid my plate over, like a bone tossed to a dog. One small slice of roast, barely any potatoes, nothing else, not a single green bean. I remember thinking, even the fork feels heavier than I do. I didn't ask for more. I never did. Asking made things worse. Made him look at me longer. Made Mom sigh louder. Made Kyle giggle because he thought that was what you did when someone got ignored. And then came the moment that twisted into my memory like rust. Darius smirked and said, "You know, Seraphine's so clumsy. Maybe we should get her a dog bowl. Then she can finally stop making a mess like a real person." Laughter. Not full-out belly laughs. Just polite, nervous, conditioned chuckles. The kind that say, "We know it's wrong, but we're tired and silence is safer." Mom didn't stop him. Her lips parted into something almost like a smile, then vanished before it settled. She didn't look at me. She hadn't in weeks. I didn't react. On the outside, but inside, everything tightened. My lungs, my back, my throat. I pushed the meat around my plate, pretending I didn't hear, pretending I was someplace else, pretending this wasn't my home anymore. It wasn't, not really. The chair across from me used to be my dad's. My real dad. When he sat there, it was the only time I felt safe eating. He had big hands that carved roast beef like it was art. He made room on his plate for extra rolls because he always gave me one when he thought no one was looking. After he died, Mom sat there. For a while. Then tonight, it was gone, replaced. The new chair was taller, darker wood, no cushion. It looked like it belonged to someone who never said please. Darius sat in it like he'd always owned it, like the past didn't matter. When Mom hesitated, standing between the chairs, unsure where to go, he patted the empty one next to him. "That's mine now," he said, calm, like it was obvious. Like it had always been his. She didn't argue, just sat beside him. And with that one motion, I felt something snap, not in the air, but inside me. I watched her tuck her napkin in her lap like everything was fine, like nothing had been erased. But I remembered the way Dad used to whisper jokes to me when Darius wasn't around. The way Mom used to braid my hair even when she was tired. the way our home used to echo with music on Sundays, not muffled sitcoms. Now, we didn't even make eye contact. Darius cut his meat loud, dramatic. "Kyle got an A in spelling today," he announced, proud as a rooster. "Didn't you, buddy?" Kyle beamed. "Yep, I spelled February without even looking." "Smart like his daddy," Darius said, stabbing a bite of roast. "Ain't that right, Elaine?" Mom nodded, smiling soft. "He's been working so hard." No one asked about my grades. No one remembered I won second place in the science fair last week. No one had even looked at the certificate still hanging crooked on the fridge. That's the thing about certain families. They don't forget. They erase. Every bite I took felt like chewing through wallpaper. I wanted to scream, not yell, just scream. From the center of my ribs, I wanted someone to see me, to say, "This isn't right." I wanted Mom to blink and wake up and realize this wasn't the life we were supposed to have. But I knew better. So I chewed and swallowed and listened to the quiet hum of nothing important being said. When dinner ended, Kyle skipped off to watch cartoons. Mom stood to clear the plates. Darius leaned back, one arm draped over the back of his new chair like a king. I stayed seated, not because I wasn't allowed to leave, but because I couldn't move. I stared at the chair that used to be my father's, and I thought about how easily things change when no one fights for them to stay. I'd thought silence was safety, that if I just kept quiet, the storm would pass. But I was wrong. Because that night, I realized silence wasn't protecting me. It was burying me alive. Morning came with no warmth, just a pale, sharp light through the frosted window panes that made everything look lonelier. I lay still in bed for a long time, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. My blanket felt heavy, but not in the comforting way. Heavy, like I'd buried myself under silence and didn't know how to climb out. Downstairs, I could already hear the clatter of Darius's boots and the syrupy voice he saved for my little brother. "You finished your cereal already, buddy. Look at you. Quick, sharp, just like your dad." Their laughter floated up like smoke, sweet but choking. I slipped out of bed quietly. I didn't want them to know I was awake. If they didn't see me, maybe they wouldn't say anything that could slice me in two before I even brushed my teeth. But fate had other plans. I came down the stairs slow, hugging my backpack to my chest like armor. As I reached the bottom, I heard him again. "Elaine, you ever notice how fast Kyle picks things up? Like that math sheet yesterday, done in 10 minutes flat. Now Seraphine, she's always a few steps behind. Can't seem to catch up." He said it like he was making an observation about the weather. Calm, objective, but it hit like a brick. I paused mid-step, heart thudding loud in my ears. Mom didn't say anything, not even a, "That's not fair." She just adjusted the collar on Kyle's coat and handed him a new set of colored pencils wrapped in plastic. "Got these for your project," she said, smiling. "Brand new." He cheered. "Awesome. Thanks, Mom." I tightened my grip on my old frayed backpack. Inside were textbooks that had once belonged to someone named Rebecca, her name still scrawled in glitter pen on the inside cover. Pages curled, math problems already solved in fading pencil. No one even offered me an eraser, let alone new supplies. "Come on, you don't want to be late," Darius said, ruffling Kyle's hair and giving me a glance that barely registered as acknowledgement. "You too, Seraphine. Try not to trip over your own feet today." Outside, the cold snapped at my skin. We walked in silence down the sidewalk, snow crunching under our boots. Kyle skipped ahead, excited to show his pencils to friends. I lagged behind, eyes on the ground. About halfway down the block, Mrs. Claremont, the neighbor with the perfect lawn and too many wind chimes, came out to fetch her newspaper. "Well, good morning, Elaine," she called cheerfully, "and look at your lovely kids, getting so tall." I looked up, hopeful for a moment. She'd said kids, like we were both hers. But then Darius stepped in. He chuckled and nodded toward Kyle. "That one's ours. bright as a whip. The girl, she's from Elaine's first, you know. I stopped breathing for a second. Elaine's first, like I was a project she'd started and never finished. The neighbor's smile faltered. Her eyes darted to me, then away, like she wasn't sure how to respond. I offered a tight smile, not because I felt like smiling, but because it was the only thing left to do when you'd just been erased in front of your whole street. We kept walking, and no one said a word. Darius just whistled. Mom looked straight ahead. Kyle kicked snow at a tree. The worst part? I wasn't surprised. I'd stopped being surprised a long time ago. I made it to school without crying. I focused on the cold wind hitting my face, counting my steps, anything to hold the tears back. In homeroom, the teacher handed back our spelling tests. I'd gotten a 92. Pretty good. Not perfect, but solid. I turned to say something to Kyle, maybe share that small win. He was already surrounded by friends, showing off his new pencils. I tucked the test back into my folder. I wanted to disappear, because to stay was to be measured and found lacking. On the walk home, I held my books tighter. Not because I thought they might fall, but because I needed to hold on to something that was mine, even if it was just a worn-out book with someone else's name inside. Have you ever been erased with a smile, as if you were nothing but a shadow trailing behind? That day taught me something. To be denied in private is pain. But to be denied in public, that carves the wound deeper, because now the whole world sees you don't belong. And it was on my birthday, when promises turned into ashes, that I finally understood how replaceable I was. They say your birthday should feel like a small miracle, like for one day, the universe might soften around the edges. I held on to that thought as I woke up, the sunlight slipping through my worn curtain, lighting up the floating dust like glitter on invisible threads. For a second, it felt almost magical. I lay still, listening. No footsteps yet, no banging cabinets, just the groan of the old heater trying to catch its breath. My birthday. 11. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the day someone noticed. Not because I dropped a glass or left a book on the table, but because I was still here, still trying. I slid quietly out of bed, feet hitting the cold floor. I got dressed slowly, brushing my hair with extra care, tucked the flyaways behind my ears. I even folded my pajamas neatly, the way I'd seen Mom do when she was still her. Downstairs, the living room looked halfway dressed up. A few faded streamers drooped along the curtain rod. A plastic happy birthday banner with 2 missing letters hung crooked above the TV. There was a paper plate on the table with my name scribbled in marker, the ink smudged at the edges. Elaine was in the kitchen, her back to me, stirring something in a pan that didn't smell like cake. When she turned and saw me, her face lit up, but only halfway. "Hey, birthday girl. We'll do something special when you get home from school. Just us, okay?" I nodded, even smiled. It didn't matter how small. It just mattered that she said it. School felt like walking uphill through mud. Every class dragged, every clock ticked louder than usual. I barely heard what the teacher said. I kept imagining the living room, maybe a cake waiting, maybe one small gift, something wrapped, anything. Just a few words that made the day feel mine. By dismissal, my hands were sweaty inside my gloves. My feet barely touched the sidewalk on the walk home. I took the shortcut through the alley behind the grocery store, just to shave off 30 seconds. But when I opened the front door, hope scattered like dust in the sun. No voices, no laughter, no warmth, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the stale smell of something burnt earlier. The kitchen counter had a single plastic container on it. Inside, 1 vanilla cupcake with thick pink icing and a single candle, still white and untouched. The note beside it was short and sharp. "Sorry, Kyle won first place in art. Took him out to celebrate. Be back later. Love, Mom." It felt like all the air left the room. I stood there for a while, coat still on, bag still over my shoulder. My eyes locked on that cupcake, like it might come alive if I waited long enough. I lit the candle myself. The match trembled in my fingers. The flame flared, then settled into a soft, steady flicker. I whispered a wish. But it wasn't a wish, not really. It was a question I couldn't ask out loud. And then I blew it out. The frosting was too sweet, like it was trying too hard. The cake crumbled dry in my mouth. I ate one bite, maybe two, then dropped the rest in the trash and washed the crumbs from my hands like they were something shameful. I sat on the couch until the sun started fading. Didn't turn on the TV, didn't read, just watched the window slowly turn from gold to gray. The front door opened just after dark. Elaine's voice floated in first, followed by Darius's laugh and Kyle's excited chatter. "She said the trophy's going in the school's hallway. Can you believe it?" Kyle shouted, showing off a paper-wrapped bundle. "That's my boy," Darius said proudly. "We had a real celebration, huh?" They walked right past me. Darius didn't look my way. Kyle didn't ask about my day. Elaine noticed the cupcake container, now empty. "You got it, right?" she asked, setting down a purse full of receipts and gum wrappers. I nodded. No point in saying anything else. "We'll make it up to you next time," she added quietly, avoiding my eyes. Darius scoffed, hanging his coat. "She got a cupcake, didn't she? Should be grateful. I didn't get squat on my birthdays." He laughed like it was a joke, but it wasn't. That night, I went to my room, still wearing the same clothes. I opened my history book, the one with the torn cover and bent pages. I slid the used candle between the pages, pressing it flat so it wouldn't roll. I didn't cry. I just stared at the flame's ghost in my mind, wondering how something so small could burn so much. Have you ever celebrated your own birthday alone, pretending it didn't matter, because silence told you it never would? And then came the night when silence wasn't enough. They threw me into the storm itself. I'd thought the birthday would be the bottom. That cold, hollow day with the untouched cupcake and the candle that burned out quicker than my hope. But that was just the quiet before the breaking point. That night, the air in the house felt heavier than usual. The lights buzzed low in the living room, and the shadows stretched longer across the carpet like they were trying to hide from what was coming. I was sitting at the edge of the couch, legs tucked under me, a glass of milk balancing on my knees. I held it carefully, like it might shatter if I so much as blinked too hard. Elaine, Mom, was folding laundry on the recliner, her eyes glued to the TV but not really watching. Darius was behind the couch, fiddling with a lighter like he always did when something ugly was bubbling under his skin. The flames reflected in his glasses, tiny flickers that made his face seem darker somehow. It happened so fast, I couldn't even track the moment it began. My elbow brushed the armrest, and the glass tipped. Milk splashed across the cushion and onto the carpet, a soft patter that seemed louder than the television. I froze. My hands still gripped the empty glass like I could reverse time if I held on tight enough. The silence that followed was the kind that comes right before a thunderclap. He didn't yell at first. That was worse. He just stared, lips curling, jaw tightening. Then, like a dam breaking, he exploded. "God Almighty," Darius growled, flinging the lighter onto the coffee table. "You're 11 years old and still spill like a damn toddler." "I'm sorry," I whispered, already standing, heart hammering. "I'll clean it up. Really, it's not—" He was on me before I could finish. One of his hands clamped around my upper arm. The grip wasn't bruising, not yet, but it was meant to remind me who had the power in this house. His fingers dug in just enough. "You're not sorry," he hissed, dragging me toward the front door. "You're useless. Can't walk, can't eat, can't shut up. You should never have been born." I looked back at Elaine. She was still holding a towel, still staring at the TV. Her mouth opened slightly like she might speak, but nothing came out. Her eyes didn't meet mine. I tripped trying to pull back, but Darius was stronger. With one rough jerk, he unlocked the deadbolt and flung open the door. The wind outside howled in like a warning. "Please," I begged, my voice cracking. "It's cold. I'll be more careful, please." "You think I care?" he spat. "Go cry to someone who gives a damn." And then he shoved me out. Bare feet hit the concrete. Rain slapped my face. The door slammed behind me with a finality I can still hear to this day. A second later, I heard the click of the lock turning. That sound rang louder than anything I'd ever heard. The cold cut straight through my thin pajama pants. My shirt clung to my back, soaked instantly. I stood there, stunned, rain pouring over my hair and down my neck. My teeth started chattering before I even realized I was shivering. I turned back to the door, tried the knob. Locked. I knocked once, then again, harder. Nothing. I could see the faint glow of the television through the curtains. Inside, the world kept turning. Inside, I didn't exist. I backed away from the porch, each step crunching against the gravel. I winced. The stones tore at my feet. I didn't know then that I'd cut my soles, only that each step burned. I wandered down the driveway, unsure of where to go. My breath came out in shaky bursts, little clouds that vanished before I could see them fully. Mud sucked at my toes. My hair stuck to my cheeks. The rain wasn't just cold. It felt like punishment. I paused near the edge of the yard and looked down. Footprints. Bare, red-tinged, messy little ovals trailing behind me. Some smeared, others broken by stones. Each one proof that I'd been there, that I had walked away, that no one had followed. I waited. I thought maybe Elaine would come, that maybe, this time, she'd say enough, that she'd open the door and whisper my name through the rain. But the porch light never flicked on. The curtains didn't shift. The world stayed still. I wrapped my arms around myself and kept walking, because what else was I supposed to do? Maybe you felt that too, the moment you realize the door behind you isn't just closed. It's been shut, sealed, and bolted, and nobody's reaching for the handle. I used to think silence was my shield. But that night, standing barefoot in the middle of a storm, I learned the truth. Silence wasn't protecting me. It was the weapon they used to erase me. I didn't know where I was going. I just kept moving, one bleeding step after another, through streets slick with ice, chasing some fragile flicker of hope, smaller than the birthday candle I'd tucked into my coat pocket. That flame had meant something. Maybe still did. The rain had quieted to a drizzle, but the cold only deepened. Every gust of wind cut like broken glass. My hands had gone numb hours ago, or maybe minutes. I couldn't tell anymore. All I knew was my legs kept shaking, and I had to keep moving because if I stopped, I might not start again. I wandered past shuttered stores, dim porches, and parked cars blanketed in frost. A few porch lights were still on, but I didn't dare knock. What would I say? "Hi, I spilled milk and my stepfather threw me out barefoot." People don't open their doors for stories like that. Not for girls like me. Eventually, I saw it. The old playground just past the church lot. The same place where, once upon a different life, my father taught me how to ride a bike without training wheels. I remembered him jogging behind me, laughing, steadying me with one hand until I found balance. That memory floated up without warning, soft around the edges, cruel in its warmth. Now the playground was empty. The monkey bars were slick with ice, the merry-go-round creaked gently in the wind, and the swings moved just enough to look haunted. I staggered toward the rusted slide in the back corner. It had always tilted slightly, one leg sunken into the ground. As a kid, I used to hide under it and pretend it was a castle. Tonight, it was the only shelter I had. I dropped to my knees and crawled under. The ground was wet, cold mud clinging to my legs. My breath came in jagged bursts. I wrapped my arms around myself and tucked my chin down to my chest, trying to shrink into nothing. Every part of me hurt, my feet, my shoulders, my face raw from the wind. My teeth chattered so hard I bit my lip without meaning to. I could taste the coppery warmth of blood. It was the only warmth I had. Every breath felt like shards of glass inside my chest. I whispered that into the dark like it was a prayer or a truth I needed to say out loud to survive. The words didn't echo, but they settled around me like something real. I pressed my body against the earth, as if the cold ground might pull me in, might cover me the way blankets used to when someone cared enough to tuck me in. Then, like a whisper from my pocket, I remembered it. The candle. I reached for it with fingers that barely bent, pulled out the tiny stub I'd kept from my birthday, the one I never got to celebrate. Its wax was cracked, the wick bent. I cupped it in both hands and looked at it like it might answer back. My eyes scanned the mud around me, desperate for something, anything. And then I saw it. A book of matches, half buried near the base of the slide. Probably from a forgotten pack someone dropped long ago. I picked it up, clumsy with numb hands, and struck one. The first snapped, the second fizzled, the third caught. For a second, just 1 second, that tiny flame danced. It lit up the candle's tip, flickered in my palms, reflected in my wet eyes. It wasn't warm, not really, but it was something. It was proof that I hadn't disappeared completely. The flame died fast. But in that breath of light, my heart stopped shaking. That flame lasted less than a breath, but in that breath, I knew I wasn't gone yet. I brought the candle close, kissed the side like it was someone I didn't want to lose, and whispered into the dark, "I'll make it to see tomorrow." The candle stub became my anchor, pressed tight into my palm. Not because it promised rescue, but because it reminded me of a time before all this. A time when someone did love me. When birthdays meant more than crumbs. I don't know how long I stayed there, half buried in mud, clutching that broken piece of wax, but I know that it carried me through the night. Sometimes it's the smallest thing that keeps you alive. For me, it was a broken candle stub. What was it for you? I stayed curled under that rusted playground slide until the wind began to whisper something worse than cold. It whispered no one's coming. And it was right. As the sky shifted from black to a bruised gray, I peeled myself from the muddy earth, one limb at a time. My joints cracked, my feet burned with every step like someone had lit matches under the skin. But I walked anyway. What else could I do? Stay there and become part of the frost? The town looked familiar but distant. Wet sidewalks, puddles swirling with oil rainbows, the air heavy with that metallic scent that always came after a storm. Church bells rang faintly from down the street. Sunday morning, I guessed. Another day, same silence. The first house I came to had always felt safe from the outside, Mrs. Riley's place. She used to wave when I rode my bike past, sometimes handed out cookies in spring. I shuffled up to the porch and knocked, lightly at first, then harder. I heard the shuffle of feet inside. Curtains moved, then stillness. A second later, the porch light clicked off. They saw me, but chose to unsee me. I turned around slowly, my breath catching in my chest, not from cold this time, but from something deeper, like falling down a well and realizing no one was holding the rope. I tried the grocery store next, walked straight up to the entrance, where a couple of older ladies were unloading milk crates from their trunks. They saw me, eyes dropping to my bare feet, then darting back up. One whispered to the other, "That's the girl from Elaine's house. You know? Her." I opened my mouth, just to ask for water, warmth, anything. But one of the clerks near the door shook his head and mumbled, "Sorry, we're not open yet." Even though I could see the lights were on and people inside, they weren't pretending not to see me. They were choosing not to. I kept going, past the post office, past the gas station. Every door I approached closed just a little faster. Eventually, I turned onto Maple Street, where my best friend Carla used to live. We'd braided each other's hair on her front steps, shared secrets and chewing gum and dreams about running away to California one day. I climbed her porch and knocked. 3 firm taps. The door opened. But it wasn't Carla. It was her mom. Her expression froze the blood in my chest faster than the cold ever could. "We don't want any part of whatever drama's going on at your place," she said. "You should go home." I blinked, tried to speak, but no sound came out. Then I saw Carla behind her, just barely, peeking from behind the curtain in the hallway. Her eyes were wide. She looked like she wanted to say something, do something. But she didn't move. The door clicked shut. If there was still a piece of me left that believed in people, it cracked in that moment. I wandered toward the one place I hadn't tried, the police station. It was only 5 blocks away, and I had no plan, just instinct. It was warm inside. Bright lights, coffee smell. A man in uniform behind the desk looked up when I walked in. His gaze swept over me. Mud-caked pajamas, cracked lips, raw feet. "You lost?" he asked, eyebrows already lifting like he'd heard enough before I said anything. My stepdad," I started, but my voice cracked. I tried again. "He locked me out. I've been out all night. I just need someone." He sighed. "Look, kid, families argue, parents get upset. Doesn't mean you get to wander town barefoot causing panic." He tapped his pen against the desk, not even looking at me anymore. "Go home. Your mom's probably worried sick." She saw it. She didn't stop him. That made him pause, but not long enough. He leaned back in his chair. "This is a family issue, not criminal. If there's no bruises, no charges, that's the law." Then he picked up a phone and dialed. I heard him say my name, confirm my address, say I was safe. After he hung up, he nodded toward the door. "They'll come get you. Just wait outside." He didn't offer a chair, or a blanket, or even a look that said he believed me. I stepped back out into the cold, my body no warmer than it had been an hour before. I leaned against the brick wall outside the station, the sun rising slowly over the town that had turned its face away. In that moment, even the law told me I wasn't worth saving. I stayed there, sat on the curb, watched the morning go by in cars and footsteps and laughter that didn't belong to me. Maybe I could have run again. But I didn't. Not yet. Because sometimes the hardest part of surviving isn't the cold or the hunger, it's the look in people's eyes when they see you and choose not to care. Have you ever begged for help, only to be told your pain wasn't real? That's the kind of silence that kills twice. I sat on the cold concrete outside the police station, watching the mist rise off the street as dawn began to unfold. My legs were tucked tight to my chest, arms wrapped around them like a shield against everything. After the night I'd had, I didn't expect anything. Not a ride, not a glance, not a crumb of kindness. Then I heard footsteps. They weren't rushed or careless. Slow, steady. Work boots on wet pavement. I didn't look up at first, but the footsteps stopped a few feet from me. "You all right, kid?" I flinched, pulled my arms tighter. Then I saw it. A jacket being held out. Thick, flannel-lined, still warm from someone's body. I looked up and saw a man, mid-50s maybe, broad shoulders, face lined deep from years of sun and grit. His eyes didn't dart away like the others. He wasn't afraid of what I looked like. For the first time that night, I felt seen. I hesitated before taking the coat. When I did, he didn't touch me, didn't push, just sat down on the steps a short distance away. "Name's Tom," he said, rubbing his hands together. "Didn't mean to scare you. I saw you out here when I came to file a report. You been out all night?" I nodded, but still didn't speak. His eyes softened. "I know who you are. You're Elaine's girl, aren't you?" That made me pull back. Usually when people said my mother's name, it was followed by disgust or pity or lies wrapped in fake smiles. But Tom's voice held none of that. If anything, it carried something like memory. "I used to know your father," he continued, voice low. "Back before all this. Back before Elaine ran him into the ground." I stared at him. Was this another trap? My mind scrambled to keep up. When the world teaches you every outstretched hand hides a blade, how do you trust again? Tom didn't force anything. He looked out at the street, eyes far away. "I left town for a while," he said. Needed to put some miles between me and what I saw, what I knew. Elaine. She was charming back then. Manipulative, too. Made people turn on each other without lifting a finger. "I tried to warn your father once." I finally found my voice. "Did he believe you?" He exhaled. "Too late." We sat in silence again. The mist was starting to burn off with the light. Then he turned to me. "Listen, I don't know everything, but I know enough to say this. What you're going through, it's not your fault. And it's not just about Darius being cruel. There's more under the surface. Stuff your mom doesn't want you knowing." My breath caught. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There was money. Property. Your dad had it in his name before he died. And when you were born, you became a problem. You're the last thread holding that truth together." I shook my head, trying to process. Why would they want me gone? His jaw tightened. "Because the minute you're old enough to ask questions, to fight back, to prove anything, they lose everything they've built, their security, their lies, their power." I felt like I was standing on a cracked sheet of ice, every word he said breaking it further beneath me. And yet, a flicker lit inside me. Someone finally believed me. Someone knew I wasn't crazy. I looked at him for a long time. Why now? Why tell me this? He didn't hesitate. "Because when I saw you sitting here, I saw your father. The same eyes, same stubborn fight in your bones. And I knew I should have done more back then. Maybe this is my second chance to get it right." My throat tightened. I wanted to believe him. But my chest still carried the bruises of too many betrayals. "If a stranger knew the truth about your family, would you trust him? Or would you run again?" I didn't have an answer yet. But I didn't move. And then, just as I began to believe his words, the shadow I feared most stepped out of the dark. The man's words were still hanging in the air, thick, unsettling, when I saw the silhouette stepping out from the shadows, Elaine. The dawn hadn't fully broken yet, and the weak orange light from the street lamp flickered across her face. Her smile was thin and sharp, like something carved from ice. She held a manila envelope in one hand and a cold confidence in the other. I stood slowly, every part of me tense. "Well, well," she said, voice too calm for the storm I could feel building. "You've caused quite the scene." Tom moved slightly in front of me, not aggressive, just protective. She didn't acknowledge him. Her eyes were on me like I was something beneath her shoe. "You think anyone will believe you, girl?" she said, shaking the envelope. "You've always been a burden. I've already taken care of it." She stepped closer, holding out the papers like a threat. "Go ahead. Take a look. No school record, no birth certificate, no medical files. You don't exist on paper anymore." I stared at her, my throat tightening, but I didn't reach for the envelope. Instead, I spoke, voice shaking but steady. "I am here. I bleed. I breathe. And I remember." Her smile faltered. Briefly. Behind her, I heard heavy footsteps. Then a voice I'd never mistake, even in a dream. Darius. He didn't walk so much as storm forward, eyes already blazing. "What is this? You run off, make up stories, drag strangers into our family's business?" His hand shot out and grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. "You little brat!" "Let her go," Tom growled, stepping in, jaw clenched. But Darius wasn't listening. He pulled me closer, lowering his voice. You want to tell lies? Fine. But don't act surprised when no one believes a messed up little liar. I saw 2 police officers by the entrance watching, unsure whether to intervene. Darius looked calm enough to fool strangers, but not me. He was unraveling beneath the skin. She's unhinged, he barked suddenly, pointing at me. We've tried to help her, but she makes things up. She's disturbed. I could see the officers glance at each other, hesitating. Elaine folded her arms like a silent judge, her presence cold and immovable. And then Tom stepped forward. I knew her father, he said clearly. I knew the man before she ever married him. I watched what Elaine did. I know exactly what this girl is running from. The air went still. Even Elaine blinked. I worked with her father at the plant, Tom continued, voice steady. He told me things back then, how money disappeared, how people around him twisted his life. I believed him then, and I believe her now. One officer shifted. Do you have anything to back that up? My heart pounded. I reached into the inside pocket of Tom's coat where I had tucked something long ago, so small, so easy to forget. A notebook, old, frayed, one of the only things I had carried with me from house to house. And I held it out with both hands. My father gave me this, I said. I used to think it was just for memories, but in the back there's a page. I turned to it carefully. The handwriting was shaky but unmistakably his. A name, a date, a note that read, Seraphine is mine, no matter what Elaine says. Underneath it, if anything happens to me, she needs to know the truth. The officers leaned in to read. Elaine stepped back. Darius growled, louder now. This is garbage. You think anyone cares about some scrap of paper? His voice cracked, and then, like an animal cornered, he lunged. This time, toward Tom. Tom moved fast, but Darius grabbed the edge of his coat, throwing a punch. The hit didn't land. What did was the chaos. Sir, back off, one officer shouted. Darius turned on him. Don't you get it? She's lying. She's trying to ruin everything. The second officer stepped in. Hands where I can see them. Elaine started yelling, but her voice was drowned out by the snap of metal on wrists. Darius struggled, but it was too late. The cuffs clicked into place, and his threats melted into curses under breath. Elaine looked at me, her expression unreadable. You think this changes anything? She hissed. You're still nothing. I stepped closer. My voice came out quieter than I expected, but every word landed solid. I may be nothing to you, but I know who I am now, and that's enough. She didn't answer. The officers guided Darius to the squad car. Elaine didn't follow. She just stood there, her carefully built world crumbling, the mask cracking. And as the cuffs snapped shut, I finally exhaled, but I knew the war inside me wasn't over. The cuffs had clicked shut with a finality I hadn't expected. For a moment, all I heard was the metal echo, then quiet, like the air itself was holding its breath. Darius thrashed once, then again, but his fight drained fast. Maybe it was the weight of the officers on each side of him, or maybe it was that something in him finally realized. It was over. His voice, once so loud it drowned out my own heartbeat, fell into mumbled curses and breathless huffing as they pushed him toward the cruiser. The man who had dominated every room, every dinner table, now reduced to a hunched, sweating shell of his former self. Inside the station, I watched from behind the smudged glass door. Elaine was still sitting on the bench near the intake desk, her shoulders tight, her grip white-knuckled around that same manila envelope, the one she'd waved like a weapon. Its corners were now crumpled, pages spilling loose onto the floor like defeated soldiers. She didn't pick them up. For the first time, she wasn't barking orders or slinging threats. She was just still. Her lips moved like she was mouthing something to herself, maybe a prayer or a curse. I stood a few feet away, watching her but feeling nothing. No victory, no satisfaction, just a strange, hollow ache where rage used to live. The detective, an older woman with tired eyes and coffee breath, leaned down beside Elaine, holding the notebook I'd given them. "You can keep denying, Elaine," she said quietly. "But this isn't just a mistake. Falsifying government documents, obstructing custody records. You can fight the world, but you can't fight the truth." Elaine didn't respond. Her hands shook slightly, not enough for most people to notice. But I saw it. For years, I had studied her every twitch, waiting for the moment she'd explode. This wasn't that. This was the slow unraveling of someone who thought they were untouchable. And now, she was touched. Deeply. Visibly. I shifted the damp coat tighter around me. Tom had disappeared into a back hallway with one of the officers, answering more questions about the past, about Dad, about why no one had spoken up sooner. But I wasn't angry at him for that. People don't always stay to fight. Sometimes they survive the only way they know how, by walking away. It was the first time I could see that without judgment. Someone offered me a cup of water. I nodded, took it, drank it slowly, the kind of slow that only comes after adrenaline drains out of your system and your hands stop trembling. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, humming low. The station smelled like wet carpet and old coffee filters. "Do you want to press additional charges?" the detective asked gently, returning to my side. I looked down at my feet, still bandaged, bruised, aching with every step. But I stood upright now. My back didn't bow. My eyes didn't lower. "I want justice," I said. "For what they altered." "For what they took," she nodded. "But not revenge," I added. "I'm not here to feed what they are. I just want it to end." The woman looked at me with something close to respect. Not pity. Something warmer, firmer. She walked away without another word. A little while later, I stepped outside. The sky was no longer gray. Light spilled across the pavement, and the clouds, those heavy wet things, had drifted east, leaving only puddles and a crisp coolness in the air. My breath curled in front of me, and the wind kissed the sides of my face, not harsh but not soft either, just real. I looked down. My bare feet touched the concrete lightly, still sore, still raw under the gauze. But I wasn't limping anymore, not quite walking normally, but not broken. Behind me, the door creaked shut with a muted click. I walked toward the edge of the lot where the sidewalk met the curb. A puddle rippled as a breeze blew past. The same rain that had soaked me through the night before, the same storm that drove me under that rusted slide, now washed the dust from the earth. I closed my eyes, and I whispered, half to myself, half to the wind, "I'm not trash. I never was." That line wasn't for them, not for Elaine, not for Darius, not for the people who turned their faces away when I knocked. That was for the little girl who once stared at a cupcake with dust-tasting frosting and blew out her own candle with no one watching. That was for me. The notebook was still tucked safely inside the jacket, next to my chest. The candle stub inside it, cracked and waxy, pressed warm against my ribs. My anchor. I didn't know what would come next. Foster homes, court dates, maybe even questions I wasn't ready to answer yet. But I knew this much. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't a shadow in someone else's life. I was Seraphine. And that morning, I didn't just survive. I began